Spider-Man, it's said, can do a fair amount of things that a spider can. Nay, I'm underselling it. The song clearly states that he can do anything a spider can. I would say this is fairly inaccurate. I've never seen a spider spin a web at a light fitting at lightning speed, do a somersault, web up a hoodlum carrying a swag bag, and kick a scientist beetle with robot tentacle arms in the chin before returning home to its model girlfriend spider. That would be quite an interesting thing to happen in that corner of the room where that spider generally sits. Surely he can do way more than a spider can then. And I bet he's never run across a carpet at top speed, then suddenly stopped for about 8 seconds before charging forward again, or he's never left a single streak of anal cable across an alleyway so people who go to work at 7 AM can experience the dread that they're being covered in spiders. No, I don't think that he's done that. He's better than that, our Spider-Man. It's just a song really, isn't it? I'm overanalyzing a theme song from a rubbish 60s animation. This is my life now. So yes, Spider-Man is probably the number one superhero in the world, even more than Superman and Batman over the comic road in old DC there. Just like Batman as well, he's got an oozing spider's thorax load of video games, with the very first coming out on the Atari 2600, a time when your imagination had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. A lot of heavy lifting, perhaps with the proportionate strength of a spider. Not only that, but Spidey has guest starred in many games, sometimes unofficially, like Sega's 1987 classic Shinobi. Look at that Poundland spider dude. He looks like Arachnoman from WCW, the chancer. And sometimes officially too, like Shinobi's sequel Revenge of Shinobi. Look at him there, and his officially licensed face. Watch now as he ruins that legality as he turns into a dodgy version of Batman in the Japanese version of the game. Oh dear. Look at him shred, I believe that's the right vernacular, on that skateboard too in Tony Hawk's 2. And he's appeared in a lot of Marvel ensemble pieces too, some of which might feature in this video. Avengers Assemble indeed, but only on PlayStation. Sometimes he's been Lego, and Lego games are fine if you like them, but I find them about as entertaining as The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Sorry, Andrew Garfield.
No, please.
So let's filter the top performers, the Willem Dafoe from Spider-Man 1, to the rubbish, the Jennifer Dugan's reporter's performance in Spider-Man 3.
He seems to have come out of nowhere to answer the prayers of the city, just when all hope seemed to be lost.
Using a computer that I've flipped up into my bedroom that Aunt May can't see for some reason in her kitchen when it's not in use. Let's alternate them though, with a good one first because good stuff is boring, like the Chameleon episodes, the old 90s series, and then we'll have a bad game because that's more entertaining, isn't it? You know, like the old Venom and Carnage episodes from the same show. Sega's 1991 beat-em-up isn't up there with the Streets of Rages, the Punishers or the Final Fights of this world, but it is a light and colourful coin muncher with some interesting secondary missions involving platforming. These sections have seamlessly scaling transition, and you'll battle through the likes of Venom, Scorpion, Sandman and the rest of the Rogues Gallery on course for a confrontation with Dr. Doom in Latveria. And if you so choose, you can do it as Spider-Man or some of his amazing friends. No, not Firestar or Iceman, I'm afraid. You can be old Hawkeye. He's got a telly show at the moment, hasn't he? Submariner there, with his speedos and his tiny little wings on his ankles. And Black Cat, with her well-fed infants. I do go into more detail on this game. Well, whatever the version of more detail is in my videos, in the link there at the top of the screen, but don't swing off just yet, Spider fans. There's more to come. I've just done literally one entry. Seriously, wait. We've had a decent Spider-Man beat-em-up, so let's look at the other end of the scale with Acclaim's 1995 follow-up to Maximum Carnage, itself a rather tawdry and artless puncher, featuring the exact point in Spider Comics when the symbiote thing went a bit too much. Two players assume the role of Spider-Man and a guy wearing his old cast-offs, that being Venom, as they seek to stop the murderous rampage of Carnage and his famalam of 5 evil gunklets. While it follows the plot of the Venom Lethal Protector comics exceedingly well, those comics simply weren't very good to start off with, and the limp graphics, dull locations and kip hastening gameplay see this as a bottom runger in the realms of 16-bit beat-em-ups. With this game, you can take your pick from the Mega Drive or Mega CD versions, depending on how much you can tolerate the band Mr. Big, and multiple different endings involving Mary Jane Spider-Man and a big old vat of acid, and some very shonky looking animation. A really good and popular superhero game during a time where Batman had the monopoly on decent games. There's a great deal of attention paid to the character of Spider-Man, his lore and his powers when games of this nature were 10 a penny. Photographs for the Daily Bugle earn money for the precious web fluid that Spider-Man needs to complete his mission. Spidey can also scale almost anything flat, and there is a wide range of his popular villains that are present and exhibit their powers in all manner of nefarious ways. I find the battle with Sandman particularly good because you have to douse him with water, a thing from the comics that. A steep challenge and tricky controls may dissuade some, especially in 2021, but it is a strong effort if persevered with. Not an incredible game, possibly, but definitely a very, very good one. '90's The Amazing Spider-Man, initially released on the Commodore 64 and Amiga, latterly ported to the PC, the Amstrad and Atari ST by Paragon and Empire Softwares respectively, is much like the Mega Drive Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, a 2D platformer. Unlike the Mega Drive game though, it's about as fun as finding an opening spider egg sac under your pillow. Mysterio has kidnapped Mary Jane, who must have an overnight bag permanently readied for her weekly abductions, and Spider-Man must navigate various stages and puzzles. The rooms and levels are based on a variety of different movie genres given Mysterio's previous special effects history in that industry. It's an example of cool concept and poor execution though, as the game is very shoddy to control and graphically as appealing as a Dr. Octopus handjob. I do like the skeleton health bar though, but that's not saying a lot, is it? Developed by Tony Hawk's Pro Skater creators, Neversoft 2000 Spider-Man marks the wall-crawler's first foray into the magical world of 3D. The limitations of the PlayStation see us fling a killer fog into the environment to prevent Peter Parker from heading to the streets of Manhattan and potentially making your PS1 as dead as Uncle Ben. Is that too soon? Smart programming, Stan Lee's narration, a range of web-based attacks, and a good supporting cast from both the Spider and larger Marvel universe all add to a great little package. While visually it's aged about as well as the Vulture or the 70s Spider-Man show, it still makes for a very good, in fact terrific, PS1 platformer. Do check it out. A platformer that's not quite as good is to be found on the 32X. The poor old 32X, eh? A mushroom of stop-gappery. Sega's answer to the Virtual Boy when it comes to their most misjudged failure. Put together by Blue Sky Software and released at the tail end of the 32X's Housefly-esque lifespan, Spider-Man was a shoddy-looking, ropey-controlling spider game. A plasma grid has been spread over New York City by those bloody Nazi-like Hydra fellas. And it's up to the webhead to go and save the Big Apple from total destruction. What a desperately poor platformer this is, to be honest. A seemingly rushed effort to see if a big-name franchise like Spider-Man can make a bit of dollar out of the last dregs of a flop console on its last legs. It's worth avoiding then, like an island full of tarantulas. Based on the 2002 Tobey Maguire sequel, this time Dr. Octopus is causing all sorts of issues. Here's a true story for you. When I was a kid, I thought that Dr. Octopus was Elton John. The second movie adaptation of Spider-Man came out after GTA 3, and just like every game of the time, it went for an open world environment, a genre that fit the character of Spider-Man very well, like his lycra pants. For the first Spider-Man game of the popularised sandbox era, it does bloody well. And yes, it really does do well. Yes, it does have a bit of a problem with repetition with some of the tasks, but one thing it doesn't have problems with is its swing mechanics, a much vaunted feature famously programmed by an obsessive programmer almost overnight. It lends this movie adaptation a grace and freedom that set it apart from the usual phoned-in movie adaptations of the time. And it also became the superior Spider-Man game for the best part of 2 decades. Many games tried to copy its formula and failed. Spider-Man 2 is simply terrific. This game was always going to be a struggle for me. Despite being an English person who got his formative games experience via the work of European software houses, I absolutely resent playing Euro platformers on a 16-bit console, be it the Mega Drive or the Super Nintendo. You can't show me the grandeur of a Mario World, a Kirby, a Rocket Knight Adventures, or even a Sonic the Hedgehog and expect me to be happy collecting 1,000 spinning pickups a level while staring at uncreated bland graphics and sprites out of a Master System game. Despite teeming with the stars of the most popular Marvel comic of the 1990s, Spider-Man's efforts to escape the clutches of a fifth-tier villain like Arcade proved to be a desperately mediocre endeavour. Don't be fooled by the 90s all-star lineup. Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge, it's a really long title that, isn't it, is one of the most substandard platformers on either console. It is terrible. I couldn't pick between the two, so I went for both 2018's Marvel Spider-Man and its sequel Miles Morales. They both share the top spot. Yes, indeed. Finally, technology has caught up with the speed of the agile arachnid aping hero. The smooth swinging of Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 is coupled with a living, breathing New York full of interesting bystanders, a ton of locales, both real and Marvel based. The level of detail is off the scale. Do you fancy going to have a look at the grungy offices of Jessica Jones? You can. The Sanctum Sanctorium deserves a swing by, don't you think? The Wakandan Embassy, the Avengers Tower, you can go and have a look at all of those. They're all here, along with a large cast of villains, a great story and interesting objectives. The end of 2018's game introduces us to young Miles Morales, a prodigious Spider-Man to be, and it's his adventure that we follow in the sequel. It's more of the same really, but with a new character with a different moveset and a brand new story. I just love that, thanks. This newish franchise does for Spider-Man what Rocksteady's Arkham did for Batman, but perhaps even more so. They're probably the best pair of superhero games of all time. A great system seller and a nice system exclusive for PlayStation there, and perhaps they are my favourite games of the last 5 years. That is quite astonishing. Spider-Man. Good Good lord, this is bad. You know how in any game featuring the Rhino you have to jump over him and he bangs his head into the wall when it's terrible and the worst part of whatever that game is? You know what? I'd rather play all those encounters in every Spider-Man game ever. I'd throw in all the Bane encounters in the Arkham games too, and I'd play them on repeat for the rest of my natural life rather than play this Fisher-Price superhero Street Fighter game ever again. Spider-Man and Steve Rogers have popped over to Latveria to stop Doctor Doom's nefarious schemes, and first they must wade through numerous one-on-one encounters with a variety of lesser goons from the Marvel comics. Batroc the Leaper, Boomerang, hurrah! It does get some presentational aspects okay, I guess. The comic cutscenes are well realised and I like the character-specific display fonts. But if one of the game's best points is its character-specific display font, then we're in some real trouble. It is, in a very crowded field of poor quality one-on-one beat-em-ups on the 8-bit and 16-bit computers, one of the absolute worst. It's as dreadful as Mary Jane dying from too much radioactive spider spunk, a thing that actually happened in a comic once. And that then, with that bombshell of radioactive spider sperm, is the end of our journey through the Webhead's digital adventures. There's a link up there to a brief look at Captain America's 16 and 8-bit games, including the last laughable effort I just talked about. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility. For you to do all those things like and subscribe and improve my algorithm. Please, someone do it. So just do that, please. Until next time then, may I do a little Stanley impression and say, Excelsior! And then say, K thanks bye? Yes, K thanks bye.